Nice. Sorry, I'm on my phone because better quality than my laptop.
That's okay. That's true of
Sweet.
a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, man.
Well, we've never spoken before, so why don't, for the sake of me, and then if we share it, talk a little bit about yourself. Share your story a little bit. You shared a bunch on with me via Twitter, so let me know.
Yeah. All right, sweet. So I'm 22 years old. I'm pretty young, I guess, and I grew up in I kind of grew up in like a pretty dysfunctional family. And then when I was super young, I went to this, just classic like Christian camp. Like I guess the denomination is evangelical, I think. And I was like 12 at the time, and yeah, I guess I just had like this moment in worship or whatever. I was super young. And I don't know, I guess my family wasn't really into the church or anything, but I guess I just started going there, and then uh yeah, and then I guess the more I grew up, more I for the rest of my teen years I was in the church at youth groups, leading, like helping out. And then uh around the time when I was like 18, 19, that's when like my faith started to, I don't know, I started to like think more, learn more. I don't know, I guess I was just growing up, and I started to see a lot of the problems in the kind of church I was in as well. Like being there since I was a kid, I could kind of, I knew all the leaders. I knew, you kind of get the ins when you're there for so long.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, and then I would say around when I was 20 is when I found Peterson. And that's when I started, just started listening to his biblical series. And kind of when I look back now, like interpreting it the way I could at the time. And because I guess my beliefs were like really fundamental, and you know the word of God's the word of God kind of thing. Like you don't really question it. You don't, you know what I mean? It's like very literal. That's just how it is. So hearing Peterson talk about it the way he did was like, and even my personality type, I'm like ENFP, and I'm like, I don't know. I would even say our generation's kind of more like extravagant in a way. If you like look at my generation, like more like I'm still like we're so into music, artists, and like all these different things. I guess is like kind of important to us, I would say. And so, kind of the way Peterson would paint these pictures about the Bible, and honestly, how humble he was, and how he was coming from such like a I don't know, you know what I mean? I don't know actually. So here's what where I'm coming from. I'm not trying to pander you anywhere. And I think that's even something that people of my generation can really notice from Peterson, that he's coming from a place that I think a lot of our generation has the same feeling of like we don't know. You know what I mean? We kind of start there because we can see how you could say boomers like are just more like trying to my way is the right way. You know what I mean? And you have to follow us, kind of thing. But anyway, so yeah, Peterson was like, at first it was just super interesting. And then I would say around, actually crazy, around quarantine time when I went into quarantine. So now it's like a couple years later, I'm like 22, 21. And uh just I don't know, I guess I just started, quarantine was kind of hard for everybody, hard for me. And that's when I really started to, I would say personally for me, I started to really like the ugly parts of my life kind of, came more to fruition. You know what I mean? Because we're just all inside, and I mean, it's just easy. I would say for me, it was easier for me to fall into temptation or just dumb decisions or whatever. And so that started happening to me. I started getting super like depressed or whatever. And then I started even like getting this first time in my whole life, getting this like victim mentality,
Hmm.
which I know is like very like poisonous, you know, for me, and it was poisonous for everyone around me. And then that's when I started listening to Peterson again, but this time it like hit me in a different way, and I like heard him. I remember this one thing he said. I'm sorry if I'm talking too much.
No, no, you're not. Keep going. You're doing great.
Okay, sweet. Thanks, bro. Uh, so yeah, so Peterson, this one thing that like hit me really hard is he said like, because I was really deep in this victim mindset, and he was like, sometimes when he would have patients that were like depressed, they would say to him, like, tell him that they're depressed, and then he would ask them all these like questions, like, do you have hobbies outside of work? Do you have friends in your life? Do you have a loving relationship? Like all these questions he'd ask them, and he would say most of the time they would say no to all those things, and then so he would say to them like, okay, maybe you are depressed, but maybe you've also just screwed yourself over, you know.
Mhm.
And for some reason, like even something that simple, just hearing that at the time, I was like, something just snapped in my head, and I was like, not only do I have all these responsibilities that are mine that I have to keep up with, I also should also be going like beyond those things, you know. I should be like doing these things that benefit me, and then I should be even going beyond that and helping the people around me. That's kind of like a big part of Peterson's message. And so yeah, and so then from that point on, I started like really like, because of that, like being such a low place, and then that Peterson kind of snapping me into place again and having the right mindset again, I started to really dive into Peterson. Like it kind of became this obsession. And this was only like April last year, and I started really, really getting into it. Um, and then I started getting into Carl Jung, and then I started reading Ion. If you know, Peterson's talked about Ion before, and and then this is when I got into Ion. That's when like I would say actually things got really weird for me. To be honest, I started reading Ion, and not in like I don't even want to say like in a particular like bad, like I guess it's kind of scary when I look back, but I guess the contents of Ion was like talking about the shadow, and he talks a lot about how the shadow, no matter uh how much you don't look at it, it's always there, and then if you don't confront it, it'll always assimilate. And then he kind of draws that same narrative to like the biggest scale of like Christianity didn't uh assimilate its shadow, and then that's what's happening right now. The shadow's kind of assimilating or whatever of Christianity. And honestly, when I was learning that, it was kind of freaking me out, because when I was watching videos on it, I was reading the book, and it was basically saying like, if you have any like lies in your life, like things that you keep under the rug, it'll come into fruition one day. And then right when I started learning about that, it started happening to me, and it was actually like frightening, man. Like I was scared reading it, because I knew I had things in my life that I was keeping secret. And then it just started like, right, like multiple things at a time just started coming to the forefront, and like it started like reshaping my whole life. And I'm actually from Canada, and I was in Canada at the time, and it actually is what led me to come to New Zealand. I'm also half New Zealand. I'm from New Zealand and Canada. My mom's from here, my dad's from Canada. And so, and then so this whole journey of, since I started reading Ion, then actually like after that all happened, like the crazy stuff, I started getting more into Jonathan, and that's what led me to you. And then and then I got really obsessed with Jonathan actually, and I started like really listening
Jonathan
to,
Peugeot.
yeah, Jonathan Pajot, yeah. And like he's like, yeah, I started listening to all his videos, and kind of like, and then since I came to New Zealand, I've started like becoming this, like, even people, my friends from back home, even people here, like kind of really mastering the way Jonathan can explain religion to people who don't even understand it at all, you know? And so I guess that's where I am now. It's like all this intuition that I had as a kid, I feel like I believe, but has turned into kind of this, like, I don't know, I feel like I'm always learning now. Like, I don't know, I feel like every day I'm changing, learning all these new things, and then even more doors open. But then I would say, like I said in the message to you, like the only downside is that, I guess, coming from a fundamental mind and like the way I believed in Christianity, it really made me feel secure, you know? And it really made me like, and I also had a better community. I had like a church, and you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess now I just feel like very, in a lot of ways, lost, you know? Like I feel like really like helpful to all my friends and really helpful to everybody. And then I can get into these really awesome conversations with people, and they can and it's like kind of amazing, these conversations, but then at the end of the day when I'm by myself, I kind of just feel lost. Like I kind of just feel like all these things are, there's so, like, it's almost like there's so much amazing things to look at now because there's so much to learn, but I don't have this like foundation that I once had, you know what I mean? So yeah, I'll just, yeah,
Well,
that's why I reached out to you, you know?
well, let's talk about, so you had a reliable church home in Canada that sounds like it was, you know, whatever. People often will evaluate churches according to their set of beliefs, but it sounds like if it was giving you a sense of security and a sense of foundation, sounds like it was made up of, you know, not perfect people, but trustworthy people who cared about you and who provided a degree of stability. Is that
Yeah,
true?
yeah, definitely.
Okay, well, what
Yeah,
do you have?
even sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, like, even though there was like a lot of bad things, obviously, I guess that's what I do understand, that that's like what happens within any kind of group of people. And then I guess inherently it was like, and I, my best friends to this day that I still talk to are like all from the church, and they're all like, even, but there's even like leaders I had growing up when I was like 14, 15, and they're like 30 now, and there's like they've lost their faith, and then I'm
Oh,
kind of like, yeah, like a lot. And
hmm,
like I'm like kind of like this, the guy that's like, you know, let's reconsider this and stuff, you know? So
hmm.
yeah, but it was a good thing. But that's the thing, is like even me and all my friends kind of have this weird thing about the because there's a bunch of different evangelical churches that we're all kind of friends, kind of, you all knew about each other. And the problem we have with them is that it just, when you really do stick around, I guess when we were young it gave us stability, but I guess now it's kind of like, you know, the message is always kind of, I don't know, it's just more like trendy, you know, like
Hmm.
it more feels like a kind of like a mall meetup, and everyone's like showing off their best fit.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I don't know if that's controversial, but like that's
Well,
just honestly what we experience.
well, it's certainly the case that there are no perfect churches,
Yeah, that's
but
true.
it's also the case that, so the kinds of books you're reading and the kinds of issues you're dealing with are big,
Yeah.
and part of the difficulty that you might be experiencing is, it sounds to me like wrestling with those ideas is sort of, think about it this way. When you were
Mm.
8 years old and you played with a really big dog, that dog would throw you around. Now, if it's
Right.
if you're just playing with the dog and the dog's not attacking or anything like that, I mean, a big German Shepherd or Rottweiler or something like that, you play with a really big dog, a dog like that will throw around an 8-year-old. Now, if
Mm.
you're, you know, if you're a grown man and you you weigh 150 pounds or more, you can feel the strength of that big dog, but the dog won't throw you around because the size of you compared to the dog is quite a bit different. In some ways, with reading some of these things, and because you're 22, you've only had limited amount
Yeah.
of time to read much. The big
Yeah.
dog's kind of throwing you around,
Yeah.
and
It's true.
so now that's, in and of itself not necessarily a bad thing. That's part of
Mm.
what big dogs do. But
Yeah.
the other aspects of your life, it sounds like, via the pandemic, via your relocation, via
Yeah.
growing up to understand more with adult eyes some of the complexities in the church world, you're
Yeah.
not you don't have, like you said in your own words, you don't have the same foundation you had before. And that
Yeah.
foundation, I mean, our image of it is rather abstract, but it was, for you as a person, it served as a foundation. And
Right.
the difficulty you have is, without that foundation, it's going to be tougher to play with some of these big dogs and wrestle with some of
Yeah.
those ideas, because you're going to get thrown around.
Yeah.
And the kinds of issues you're dealing with, eh, I mean, these are not small. So
No.
let's say, let's think about a lot of the drama that, now it's difficult for you to appreciate because you've grown up pretty much in this information saturated world of the internet.
Yeah.
But when I was growing up, it was in some ways easier for churches and institutions to maintain a projection of reliability. It was easier for them to control their projection out into the world. Now
Right.
with the internet, there's a lot more dirty laundry that gets aired, that has led,
Yeah.
partially, not just in the area of church, but certainly in that area too, into a sense of, how can I know the truth? And
Yeah.
it's led in some ways to a pervasive cynicism about institutions and leaders,
Right.
which um, which again is a loss of a foundation. Even though there certainly was corruption within those foundations in past generations, at least those
Yeah.
foundations afforded stability to community, even if the leaders weren't necessarily what everyone imagined they were. And,
Right.
for example, in the United States, President John F. Kennedy was something of a sex addict. That never would
Right.
have, that never, and the press sort of kept quiet about that in the, in the late 50s, early 60s. That never would
Right.
happen today. It would be all over the internet to the degree that it was
Yeah.
known. So,
Yeah.
let's, setting aside all of the ideas, let's just look at the context for you as a human being and all of this stuff that has happened.
Right.
Now, I think, number one, there's no shutting Pandora's box of the searing light and the questions of institutions and leaders.
Mm.
So in some ways, even if in some ways there are a lot of big dogs that you have to wrestle with, that you haven't had a lot of, you haven't had a lot of time to grow to sort of compete with those dogs. And those issues
Yeah.
surround issues about, we'll say, fundamentalist Christianity or evangelical Christianity or conservative Christianity, because
Right.
many of these issues that we're talking about with Peugeot and Peterson and Jung
Yeah.
are, these are huge issues that the Western world has been dealing with for hundreds of years to try to get a
Right.
handle on.
Yeah.
So they're big issues. And now you've
Yeah.
got access to the internet, so YouTube, with the likes of Peterson and Peugeot and myself. So you're working through those things, and
Yeah.
you're going to continue to work through those things. Those things aren't going away. Those big dogs aren't going away. But I think that in terms of the sense that you have of being tossed around, I think
Mm.
the way to address that isn't necessarily answers to the big dogs, but
Right.
more, what kinds of foundations and community can you find? And that will
Right.
probably be involved in finding a new church community, and a new
Yeah.
community that, now you're going to go into it now with your eyes open. You're not a kid anymore. You're not a
Yeah.
12-year-old who will be impressed by someone who can do this or that. Now you've
Yeah.
seen a few things and
Yeah.
you've heard. So I guess a question I would have is, of course, I don't know the details of your life. Is there
Yeah.
anything around you now, a community that
Mm.
seems to, a church or something that seems to hold some promise of saying, I've got some friends here. They seem credible. They're not perfect. They might not be a perfect fit, but might this be a place to start to rebuild a foundation so I have a more secure place to stand in order to address these big dogs that are running around the yard?
Yeah. No, totally. Yeah, and since I've gotten to New Zealand, I've I've been to I went to one church a couple times, and I even tried to get a little bit involved, And it's like a classic evangelical church, and it was actually more it felt more like American than even the Canadian one, which was weird.
How large a church?
It's pretty big. It was like in this big theater that they rent out, and it was like probably like I would say 300 people.
Okay.
Like it's pretty big.
Okay.
Like and but it's just like was classic like the rock star like worship, and then
Okay.
like but the message was actually like, even with my eyes open now,
Yeah.
it's kind of crazy. Even like kind of simple sermons I'll see the truths within the scripture and like connect things and like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. Like sermons even these days, even I would say those sermons, like the more they're trying to rile everyone up, sometimes it's honestly really good.
Good. Good.
And so, but but yeah, I don't know. I just that the, I would say the problem that I guess I end up at is maybe just the social factors
Mm.
within, because once you start, because even now with my eyes open and like, I'm not saying like I'm like woke and everyone's asleep or anything like that, just the way I'm perceiving reality now is like I
Yeah.
kind of, even through like social interactions, I'm kind of
Sure.
like super like I'm like I can see, I don't know, it's like, I guess it's hard when you like just enter a church and you haven't, because I guess the last church I was in, I was there when I was a kid, and mostly everyone I grew up with there doesn't go there anymore.
Mm.
But when I was growing up there, like I had all the ins and like,
Yeah.
I knew everybody.
It was a real
But now that,
community.
yeah, it was a real community. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially being a teenager, like, and we'd have like conferences, and like every summer was the camp, and camp was always awesome.
Yeah.
And but even for our conferences, we would have like a lot of like famous American, like the Hillsong pastors and stuff come to our church. Like,
Yeah.
Hillsong, right?
Yep.
Like we even had Carl Lentz, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's a fallen soldier. We pray
Yeah.
for our boy. Yeah, but anyway, yeah, we had a bunch of them, and so it was cool growing up in that. But I guess that's like where the problem is as well, is like that kind of celebrity pastor, like that kind of vibe. It just starts to feel like I just start to think, oh, maybe I'm not supposed to go to evangelical church.
Yeah.
And then it's like because my faith and my belief in God and the Lord started off from intuition, kind of, I guess, or like it started off from just like a vision I had when I was young, and then it would keep repeating itself at different like moments in my life. But then it's turned into now like all this knowledge I've gained from Peterson, Jonathan, all the books I've read. It's like it's almost like the truth is even more real than it was. It's like it's more true now. Like it's even more exciting as well.
Mhm.
But like I guess that's where I guess it's hard for me now to find a church. It's like, because I just feel like if I go somewhere where they don't really believe what I believe, but then it's like, I do know what I believe, but you know what I mean? I don't know if I have this fundamental mind anymore.
Yeah.
And then I do have this like theory, or kind of like this like weird thing where people who are possessed by ideologies, kind of like socially, it's not like, I don't know, it's just something different. Like it's not real to me, you know?
Yeah.
So that's where I come to like, yeah, like I think it's good to like, I think it's like, I don't even think being a fundamentalist is bad or anything. Like, do you know Francis Chan?
Yeah.
You like Francis Chan?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I growing up, I really liked Francis Chan, and I kind of, even to this day, I'm like, that's someone that I feel like is super genuine,
Yeah.
and
He
he's
seems to be
genuinely,
a leader with integrity. He does.
yeah,
He's
right. You
imperfect
like,
too, just like all of us, but he seems to be a man
yeah,
of real integrity.
yeah, totally. Like it just seems like he's like, he genuinely believes it fundamentally. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he genuinely believes it's literally true, and kind of even. But lately, do you see he's like kind of been looking into orthodoxy and stuff? If you've seen that,
I haven't seen that. That doesn't
yeah,
surprise me. That doesn't
yeah,
surprise me.
he's if you watch his like him lately, like in how the world's going, it's kind of weird as well. It's pretty dope. You should look into it. But yeah, sorry, I just bounced from
No, it's okay.
place to place,
That's okay.
but I don't know where we were at.
Well, I think, again, I mean, I can't pen those dogs for you, but I
Right,
think that the real question is, how long have you been in New Zealand now?
like since October.
Okay, so quite recent.
Yeah,
I mean, you've only been there months. You haven't even been there a year yet.
nah,
So
nah.
I think I think the main thing to pursue is to try to stabilize your in real life community. Now, you referenced, friends you are talking to. Are these people that are still in Canada and that you're talking to
Yeah,
mostly from other places?
yeah. Mostly the people I talk to are people from Canada, my
Yeah.
friends,
Yeah.
and I actually have a really, really close relationship with them. And I am going to go back eventually.
Okay.
And but yeah, but it's crazy because even with them, like it just feels like because all this crazy stuff happened, and then I moved here, and
Yeah.
then so when I go back, it's gonna be like, it just feels like it's gonna be different. Like
Yeah,
all
it
my
will be.
friends, you know what I mean? Like they all kind of like look to me as like, because they kind of, it's the reason I even like want to talk about all this is because all my friends have kind of, our generation have the same issue, and that's like kind of, you know, and I really feel like the leaders we had kind of failed us in a way, you know.
Mm.
Like I feel like we had so much like to give our generation, and then I feel like the older generation was kind of, I don't know, I don't know what it was, but I just feel like we don't have a lot of leadership, and we don't know where to go, I guess. And but I guess my main question for you would be like you're a Baptist, right?
No,
Oh,
I'm
what is
a
it?
Christian Reformed, which is Dutch
Oh,
Calvinist. So
oh, Calvinist. Yeah, yeah, I know you're a Calvinist. And then, but yeah, but like that's my question is like, you know, does it matter what denomination you go to? I guess, but what you were saying before, you were saying it doesn't really matter because of the community, but
I wouldn't say it doesn't matter. I'd say you have to figure out where that is on the hierarchy. And there are other things
right.
that are really integral, because it sounds like most of your relationships are via the internet, and these are old
Yeah,
friendships, and you should keep those old friendships. But
yeah,
being in New Zealand, you are a creature in time and space, and
yeah,
I think it might, um I mean, you should probably look around a bit and at what is available to you. And I would broaden the search beyond just evangelical churches. You could look, I mean, there might
right,
be some good Anglican churches, but and you likely won't find a group that sort of agrees with everything you think or believe.
right,
But what you should look for are people that, basically a church home that you can settle in to serve and to grow in a
Right.
real life church home with relationships with real people around you, because those will have a quality that your connections via online, I mean, especially where you're
Yeah.
at in New Zealand, I mean, you're upside down in
Yeah.
Canada, you're a day ahead to
Yeah.
6 hours behind. I mean, it's
I
like,
know. It's insane.
so I think your priority should be to find a community that you can begin to settle down with. And no
Right.
sermon will be the best, the style of worship won't be perfect, and
Yeah.
but I think, I don't know if, I'm trying to think about connections I have in New Zealand. I sometimes talk to folks in New Zealand. I know more people in Australia, but that's bigger.
Oh yeah.
So, but
Is
I don't know if
it
you've been to go ahead.
is your Akron your church at CRC?
Yeah.
I swear the other day I walked past the church that said CRC on it.
Well, it'd be interesting to
Might be.
know what if they might be. There are some Christian Reformed churches in Australia and New Zealand. They're sort of
Oh,
they're
true.
not they're not necessarily tied to us directly, but I think,
Right.
important for you is going to be a sense of fit. And
Right.
that might not, labels will indicate some things, but it won't indicate everything. And the sense of
Yeah.
fit is probably going to have a lot to do with the availability of relationships and ways to plug in and make new relationships where you're at. Now you said you're at some point going to move back to Canada. Is there a date on that, or is that just someday I'll do that? I mean, where are you at in terms of
Yeah.
school and job and some of those kinds of things?
Yeah. That's what I was gonna add because yeah. So honestly, I'm thinking about going back like in December,
Okay.
January. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's going to be hard to put down roots. And so anything you do now
Yeah.
I mean, you're obviously got a few months there, but if you go back to
Yeah.
Canada, then at least you're in a situation where you know the terrain already and can,
Right.
and I would think, maybe together with some of your friends, see if you can, as a group, find a church that, again, it won't be perfect. There's always trade-offs. A church that
Yeah.
you can, as a group, begin to come to
Yeah.
and invest in and get to
Yeah.
know the pastor. And, big churches are, now big is a very relative thing, because in the United States, 300 wouldn't be considered especially big. When I think
Right.
about big in the United States, it's like over
Yeah.
1,000. But
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
New
Yeah.
Zealand, I know the metrics are a little bit different. But
Yeah.
the key thing isn't necessarily the size. It's
Right.
the it's the availability for you to plug in a stable,
Right.
enduring way, so that, and believe me, in terms of the answers of these big dogs running around the yard, they're not gonna, those answers, those dogs aren't gonna get penned anytime soon, because those dogs have been running around for
Yeah.
a lot of years. And
Yeah.
so it's not so much about penning these dogs, it's about sort of learning to live with these dogs. But the
Right.
key thing is to, once again, try to reestablish some kind of foundation where you can, and part of the illusion of YouTube is
Mm.
that here we're talking about all these ideas.
Yeah.
And in this space, those ideas all feel very important,
Yeah.
but that's all sort of up here. And when it comes
Right.
to a human being, for which like only 10% is above the waterline here, all the rest
Yes.
of our mass is down here. All these in real life relationships, your
Right.
friends that you see every day or every week, the people you
Mm.
work with, the people you worship with, those
Yeah.
are those are really the foundation. And
Right.
that's why, especially in a case like this, I'd want to say, okay, there's all the head stuff, which is always going to be there, but pay
Yeah.
attention to the in real life community around you and look for stability there, because
Yeah.
actually that's really going to be formative in figuring out how to live with all those big dogs running around the yard.
Right. Yeah, you're right. That's true. And yeah, and I wanted to add like because the other thing I wanted to ask is that, when I came here, I signed up for I did a couple classes at university and I
Mhm.
just wanted to try like psychology, and you know what I mean,
Yep.
and just give it a little stab. And honestly, I had to drop out because it was so liberal, like,
Yeah.
and just so, because it's New Zealand, I guess, too, you know,
Yeah.
and Canada's kind of similar,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
man, it was like everything Peterson talks about. It was like, I'm like, why did I think that it wasn't gonna, like, it was like, and it was honestly like shocking, the things that, like, the classes I'd go into, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what I'm doing here. Like, it would
Yeah.
freak me out. Like, I remember they showed like the gender unicorn, and then that's like a thing that Peterson joked about with
Yeah.
Rogan.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I remember watching that when it came out, like them joking about it, and then now I'm like learning it in this like prestigious institution. I was
Yeah.
like, couldn't
Yeah.
believe it, bro.
Yeah,
But
you might look
so
for some, Christian higher education to take a class
right.
at some other places and see how
That's
that
what
goes.
that's yeah, that's what I want to know. Like, where do you go for, like, because I know that I'm a leader, and I know that I have the capability to understand. I have the capability to make complex things understandable for people, you know. So I want to use that in a leadership role. I want to use that, but then so that's where I start to get confused, and like what I always am thinking about, like, where do I go? Like, where do I start? And like, do I become like a cult leader where I have like, where we're all chill and like we're trying to understand these ideas, or do I go under some sort of denomination? I got like, that's what I'm constantly thinking about, that because I guess I'm 22 and I need to like start thinking about what I want to do. You
How
know what I
much
mean?
college have you had?
Well, I've done like I did like an internship at my church when I was like 19, and
Okay.
we learned a lot. Like, I learned about theology
Yeah.
and all that stuff, and but that's about it. And then I tried these classes, so
Well, given
yeah,
the fact that you might not stay long in New Zealand, you could start, let's
yeah,
say, shopping around for a Christian college. Um, Start shopping around for a Christian college and see what you
mm,
find doing that, because going
right,
to college is also a pretty immersive in real life thing.
yeah,
And I mean, the colleges in my universe are Calvin University in Grand Rapids and Dordt College,
right.
and there's one in Canada, Redeemer University,
Oh yeah,
in Ontario.
mm,
But you could start looking around, and now your mileage may vary on those kind of things too, but at
yeah,
least there'll be, and like I said, your mileage may vary. Christian colleges can be all over the map on a bunch of this stuff too.
yeah,
But at
yeah,
least with a Christian college, there will be a degree of expectation about some things where you might be able to find some commonality. You won't
right,
necessarily find everyone in agreement with you by any means, but at least
right,
the span of understanding, of mutual understanding, might be a little bit thicker for you, so you can go in and say, okay, well, we might not all agree, but at least we're sort of speaking the same language and have a degree of commonality in terms of our values.
yeah, yeah,
and
totally,
and that then I think also helps give a foundation by which to figure out how to live with those yard dogs, um
yeah,
and so that you don't keep getting knocked over.
yeah,
And also, at your age too, you should be thinking about, okay, what kind of, well, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? Even if
yeah,
you don't have much parental support for colleges,
no,
there's financial aid available, but and you've
yeah,
got a few months. It'll take months for you to do that kind of research, and that's all online research for the most part.
yeah,
Admissions offices will be happy to talk to you, trust me, and
right,
we'll send you materials, and then you might contact professors in departments that you're interested in, and
mm,
so there's a lot to do.
true. That's actually really good to hear, because I guess sometimes I do just like think too much about, I start thinking in the future, like arguments I'd be in and stuff. But I guess when I think about it, even when I was growing up in the evangelical church, it's like I wasn't always in agreement with everyone. Like, it is something really good to be reminded of. So yeah.
Well, how's that feel? Do you feel a little bit more settled?
Yeah, it definitely makes me feel better. It makes me feel like a good place to start, for sure.
Good, good.
Yeah, man.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, anything else? Or is that it for now?
That's it for now. We should talk again though, for sure.
All right. Well, take some steps and
Yeah.
follow through on some of them and get back to me and let me know what you're kind of discovering. Okay.
Okay, sweet. You could be my new pastor.
hopefully just temporary till you get one in real life.
Yes. Yeah, I'll try to get one.
All right.
All right. Thanks,
Okay.
Pastor.
Yeah. Take care.
Peace.
All right.
See ya.
Bye-bye.